on the 1958 Cadillac LS swap project. In the last video, I modified the top of the X-frame for a single piece drive shaft, got all the sheet metal done from the firewall all the way back to the trunk area for the tunnel, removed the engine and transmission, wire wheeled the bottom of the car, seam sealed everything, and painted everything on the bottom side up to the rear axle and everything on the inside from under the bottom of the dash all the way back to the trunk area. I also went ahead, cleaned up the 6.2 and got it painted Cadillac blue. And at the end of the video, I had mentioned to you guys that I wanted to try to put Cadillac valve covers over the coil packs on the 6.2 LS. And as you just saw, I just made some parts for those valve covers. So let's take a look at what I've got going on here. I'm gonna try to get these coils mounted under the valve covers, get this stuff painted up, and then we're gonna put the engine back in the car. I had the flywheel resurfaced for it, put everything back together, put the engine back in the car, put the Cadillac valve covers on it, and then move on to the core support, modify that, and get the Camaro Radiator situated in there, and hopefully finish this one off with painting the core support and having the radiator mounted up. At that point, basically I just have a fuel tank to build and it's on to wiring after that. So let's take a look at these valve covers. So as you guys saw in the opening of the video, I laid out some parts over here. I also went ahead and made my second adapter plate. I had one of these made already, which basically is the same shape as the bottom side of the Cadillac valve cover. Those fit nice and snug over that plate. I still have to put studs in to bolt the Cadillac covers down to. And after a while of me sitting here looking at this, trying to figure out a good way to mount the coils, the best way I can figure to do it is I have to run one coil upside down and the other one the correct way. From what I understand, you can mount these coils any way you want and it's not going to matter or make them function any differently. So I'm going to have to run one upside down, then one the correct way to get the wires to actually come out without running into stuff inside and have enough clearance to fit these things up under the Cadillac valve covers. What I'm going to do for brackets is I had actually made these which would bolt onto those with the spacers or risers that they had originally with these valve covers. And then I realized instead of messing around with all that hardware and having nuts on the bottom side, I'll probably be better off just chopping up the original coil bracket. That way I have an area for the coil to sit down into like this. It's got the threads already in the bracket, so I don't have to worry about nuts or hardware. And basically I'm just going to chop that off and have a sliver of this bracket, and I think I'm going to have to mount the coils at a slight angle upward so I can kind of get the tail end up into the high spot of the Caddy valve cover, something probably like this. And if I do that, I should be able to fit the plug wires in here in a good manner to get them to exit correctly and not rub on stuff, not be bent too tight, and have the wiring plug into the coil packs and everything clear. So I'm gonna go ahead and start chopping up that stock bracket. Let's see if I can make this stuff fit under here. I think it's gonna work out just fine. Let's get started. So I've got my coil brackets all welded onto the adapters for the Cadillac valve covers. All of that stuff is set up. The coils, spark plug wire wise, no problem to get those to come out in the proper locations, and also the wiring should be absolutely no problem to hook up to the coil packs in here. As you saw, I just welded some nuts on the bottom side of the top of that adapter where that actually hangs over the edge of the valve cover. So those nuts are actually outside the valve cover, and those are for the top 2 bolts in the Cadillac valve covers to actually hold the cover down over the coils. Now, the problem is on the bottom side, I originally thought about drilling a hole in here and then TIG welding a stud in to actually put an acorn nut or something like that to do the bottom of this valve cover, but I can't really do that because this hole actually comes out dead center over the spark plug groove, and I really don't want to have a strap or a bar on this plate because that would just be kind of a pain in the butt to run that spark plug wire in and out, and probably be sawing away at the insulation on the spark plug wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take 7/8 out on the inside of each inside area of the original bolt holes in the Cadillac valve cover. I'm going to bump these inboard 7/8 of an inch, and then it will actually line up perfectly with the original small block Chevy mounting holes that are in these valve covers. Therefore, I can run the bolt right into these holes and not have to worry about nuts or studs or being in line with that spark plug groove. So I figured this is probably going to be the easiest way to go about it without a bunch of unnecessary work or screwing around with studs and stuff like that. So cut out 7/8, bump the hole in that much, weld it back up, grind it off. No one will ever know. I have what I designed for my brand new core support. I measured this thing out to fit tight in the frame rail. I've got about 3/16, almost a 1/4 inch to the frame rail down here at this point, 7 inches up. Well, then this is above the frame rail, so I widened it back out at that point. I'm only 3/4 of an inch wide down here, but I'm gonna make this into a big C channel, just like the original. This is not 18, this is 14 gauge steel, so I'm just shy of 1/8 inch. It's about 0.90, which is exactly what the original core support was. I'm going to make this 3 inches wide, just like the original. I will C-channel it by capping the entire outside of this thing, and then on the bottom, I'm going to cap the top side and roll that up into here, and then probably like 45 it out to the side somewhere in here. That way it'll provide a lot more strength, where this is only 3/4 of an inch wide down here. Once this is all welded up, I'll figure out where I need to put the mounting hole for the core support. I'll drill that hole in there, and then I'll put a crush sleeve in it. This will replace all of the original junk. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the welder over here, start bending up my side pieces, which are, standing right here. Start bending these up to match the perimeter and the inside of this, get everything welded up. I could TIG weld this, but I think I'm just gonna go ahead and wire feed everything. It'll be a lot quicker, and the way I'm going to do it, it should be fine just running the wire feed. So I'm gonna get you guys set up, pull the welder over, get this thing built, and then we'll go back to the car, try to support the front end and make it so it doesn't move around, chop out the old one and put in the new one. So I've got some 1/2 inch by 2 flat bar cut up and welded in here supporting this front core support. Welded it off to the frame on both sides at the bottom and then stitched it off to what is going to be remaining of the original core support section here. New one is going to come in right where this line is, so I got about 3/4 of an inch of room to work with here. I got to cut this thing straight up and down at that line, and then the new one should slide right into place on the inside of that. Also put a bar across the top that is going to keep everything square, keep anything from tipping or moving sideways once I cut that center section out of here. Just remove the bolt from the bottom, sandblasted it, got it ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and make some parts to install this in the new core support, and I'm going to install it back a 1/4 inch further than in the original one, just to give myself that clearance on that sway bar. So I'm gonna go ahead, start whipping up some parts, get this finished up in the core support, and then it's time to get the Sawzall and the cutting wheels out and cut out all this original stuff. I'll keep an eye on it to make sure nothing moves on the front end, but honestly, the way that's welded up with that 1/2 inch flat bar, I don't think it's going anywhere. I'm also gonna add one more bar in this thing before cutting the original stuff out, and that is going to be across the top bumper brackets here, and then just weld it off to the grill support here, just in case, because I am going to be cutting this mount off coming forward. I wanna make sure that this doesn't twist or move as well, so I'll get a good weld all the way across the backside of this support, and then tack weld it off to those bumper brackets, so hopefully nothing up in this section moves or tweaks at that point. So let's go get this wrapped up and start cutting some stuff out of here. So I got my radiator mounted up last night. As you guys saw, I modified those original brackets up here to go out to the back side, gusseted them up on the side so they're strong enough, and at this point I have them mounted to the top piece with the 5/16 Allen-headed bolts back here. Got the 5/16 nuts welded on the inside of the top piece here so they just zing in and out. Good to go, and it's pretty good. It's mounted solid, doesn't really move around. The radiator cap is pretty much perfectly centered out in here. There's a little bit less than an 1/8 inch of space on the ends of the stock style radiator cap, but it screws right on and off without clicking on this upper piece of the core support. So that's all set up and ready to go. I have a couple things left to do here yet. Number one, I want to mount the condenser for the air conditioning on here because I probably will weld tabs off to the front side of the core support. So I need to get all my welding done here before I can paint the rest of the engine bay pretty much from here forward. So I'm going to mount the condenser. I want to think about the battery tray a little bit, how I want to do that. And then there was a brace out here from here up, and basically the one under the battery tray kind of tied the grill into the core support as well. So I'm not sure if I'm going to use the stock stuff to make that happen, or maybe just make 2 new custom supports on each side that look the same, kind of match the new core support and stuff like that. So well, then it's time to spray some paint and the engine bay will be wrapped up. So that wraps it up for the core support build. Everything is installed and ready to go at this point in time. I'm really happy with the way this stuff turned out. It really finished off the engine bay nicely up here in the front now that everything is put together. I really like the fact that I had just enough room to fit that stock 2010 radiator in here and the cooling fans. And what I really like about that whole setup is that he does want to put some long miles on this thing. He wants to be able to go out of state, go across country if he wants. And the nice part about that is if you ever have a problem with cooling fans or the radiator, you can pick that stuff up from any parts store, as opposed to if you had an aftermarket custom aluminum radiator in here, you're kind of SOL at that point if you ever break down on the road or have a problem with it. So easily replaceable. I like the fact that the condenser is forward, so basically you can remove the radiator and or cooling fans without interfering with any of the air conditioning stuff. Battery tray turned out great, tucked away on the side here. It's bigger than the stock Caddy, so I can fit a full-size battery. It looks great. So got a lot done in this video. Got the valve covers done, the engine is all set up, all the core support, radiator, air conditioning, condenser. It's looking pretty good at this point in time. Next video is gonna be fuel tank. I'm gonna get the fuel tank built in the next video. I've got a brand new sheet of 1/8 inch aluminum over there. I just picked up yesterday, so I'm gonna fab out a gas tank for this thing, get the drop-in pump in it. I'm not even sure what brand pump it is. I think it's a Holly, but it's got a drop-in pump, so I'm gonna make all that work, build the brackets, put an access hole in the trunk floor so you can get to the pump without dropping the tank. Once all that stuff is figured out, I'm gonna go ahead and finish painting the car where I left off by the rear axle, paint the bottom from there to the back bumper, paint all the trunk floors, put the tank in, and at that point, I'm getting pretty close to wiring. The only things left before wiring are gonna be exhaust and putting the gauges in the dashboard, so it's getting closer little by little. I'm pretty excited about getting to the point of wiring and getting this thing wrapped up, so appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching. Till next time.